Hey guys, Joel Seidman here. In this video I want to go over proper hip hinge mechanics, specifically on the RDL, and I want to do that by highlighting several of the most common errors and miscues that I see commonly in gym settings as well as in many strength and conditioning settings with coaches and with trainers. So the first thing I want to go over here for an RDL is spinal positioning, spinal alignment. That is the single most important cue and most important key in terms of locking in the movement for the RDL or the hip hinge. So on the eccentric portion of the RDL, okay, it's going to be important that we start off by pinning the shoulders back and flexing the lats and making sure we have a slight natural lordotic curvature in the spine, but not excessive, still keeping the core tight without excessive lumbar extension, okay? So a lot of people, they just let their shoulders go and then their back starts around. We want to make sure we're pulling the bar tightly against our thighs. That makes sure that our shoulder blades are pinned back and we have good T-spine extension throughout the movement. Now, next thing I want to point out, as you can see here, that's the optimal range of motion to go in an RDL. You'll see a lot of people trying to overstretch it, trying to get an excessive stretch or range of motion in their posterior chain, thinking that, hey, you know, the more stretch they get in their hamstrings and their glutes, the more growth and the more strength gains they're going to get, and that is false. We want an optimal range of motion, not an excessive range of motion. So again, that'll look something like this, right there, okay? Now, I want to highlight something here. If I hold this position and I drop the weight, this is nothing more than a broad jump position. If I was going to jump out as far as I could, that would be the position I would go from. So an RDL and a hip hinge is nothing more than basically a more controlled version or more systematic version of a broad jump. Okay, so when I'm teaching my athletes how to do a proper hinge or a proper RDL, one of the first things I tell them is pretend you're doing a broad jump or simulate a broad jump position, and that almost always kind of gets them thinking in the right direction, gives them a good cue so they realize, hey, I don't need to overstretch this, I just need natural elongation of the posterior chain throughout. Next thing I want to go over here is from the front view. A lot of people have a slight valgus collapse when they do their RDLs and hip hinge. Even sometimes it's very subtle and difficult to see. We actually want to push the knees out just slightly and stay somewhat on the outside of the foot while still keeping the base of the big toe pushed down into the ground. So it's going to look just like this, similar to a squat. When I come down, I don't want my knees in, I want them slightly out right there, okay? So a lot of people, they neglect this component, and it is very critical. It's probably the most underrated component of the RDL or hip hinge, and it really can make or break proper positioning. The last few things I want to go over here has to do with spinal positioning on the concentric phase. So really common when people are doing their deadlifts or hip hinge, when they come up, they'll get into this excessive posterior pelvic tilt, their shoulders will roll over, their hips will almost excessively drive forward. We want to keep everything in neutral spinal position, even though we are squeezing our glutes. So when I come up to the top here, I squeeze my glutes. I'm squeezing my glutes, but I'm still maintaining proper spinal line, not doing this whole weird thing that you'll see people going into almost excessive kyphosis, rounding of the shoulders, head forward tilt, excessive posterior pelvic tilt. Those are actually symptoms that you would see on an aging spine for somebody in their 70s or 80s. We certainly don't want to reinforce that when we're doing any movement, particularly when we have axial loading going on. It is not a functional movement, regardless of what you've heard from different professionals in the field. We want to go to a neutral position. We never want this stuff to go on, even though you think you're getting a bigger squeeze in the glutes and the hamstrings. It is not an ideal position at all, so keep it neutral. I think those are all the things I want to go over for the RDL and hip hinge. Give it a try. Let me know what you think, all right? Thanks.